Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into karma. And you might be surprised to learn it's a lot more nuanced than just, that whole what goes around comes around thing. We'll be exploring this concept through a Buddhist lens, using excerpts from a lecture called Karma3.mp3. Get ready to challenge some assumptions.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people think of karma as just like simple cause and effect system, but from a Buddhist perspective, it goes so much deeper than that. It's really about understanding how all of our actions and their consequences are interconnected, and not just in this life, but potentially across multiple lifetimes.
Cool, right off the bat. The idea that our actions could have consequences across lifetimes. That's pretty mind-blowing. But let's back up for a sec. The lecture mentions this idea of karma being like planting seeds. Can you unpack that for us a bit?
Sure, imagine this. Every action we take is like planting a seed. These seeds create imprints. Buddhists call these karmic dispositions, and these karmic dispositions shape our future experiences. So it's not really about some predetermined fate, but more like having a certain predisposition.
So it's like if I'm constantly doom scrolling on social media and comparing myself to others, I'm basically planting these seeds of like insecurity and dissatisfaction.
Exactly. That feeling of always wanting more, that need for external validation, that feeling of never having enough. That's a classic example of what the Buddhist teachings refer to as the hungry ghost realm.
Hold on, hungry ghost. Are you telling me there's a little bit of hungry ghost in all of us?
Well, think about it. How often do we find ourselves feeling empty or incomplete,
Yeah.
even when we seem to have everything we need? I mean, that yearning for something more, that feeling of never enough. I think it's safe to say that the hungry ghost mentality is alive and well in our modern world.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. So these realms, they're not like literal places, are they? They're more like states of being.
Yeah.
And we cycle through them based on our actions.
Yes, precisely. The six realms. So you have hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, and God. They're symbolic representations of different states of mind and being. They're not really meant to be taken literally, but they offer a framework for understanding how our actions shape our inner world.
Okay, so we're planting these karmic seeds that influence our state of being. But what about free will? I mean, if our actions are shaped by our past karma, do we actually have a choice in the matter?
Ah, yes. The age-old question. This is where things get a bit tricky. The source material delves into this complex relationship between karma and free will. And while past karma definitely creates tendencies and predispositions, it doesn't completely determine our fate. We always have the capacity to make choices that can change those karmic patterns.
It's not like we're puppets on strings being controlled by our past actions. There's still room for change and growth.
Absolutely. Think of it like a genetic predisposition to a certain illness. Your genes might make you more susceptible, but your lifestyle choices still play a huge role in whether or not you actually develop the illness.
That's a really helpful analogy. So even if we have karmic tendencies from past actions, we can still make choices in the present moment that influence our path moving forward.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of skillful action comes in. It's about making conscious choices that create positive karma, choices that lead to more fulfilling experiences.
So it's not just about avoiding negative actions, it's about actively cultivating positive ones as well.
Precisely. And the beautiful thing is, the more we cultivate these positive qualities, like kindness, generosity, and compassion, the more those qualities become a natural part of who we are. And that naturally leads to more skillful actions.
This is already making me rethink my own day-to-day choices. But before we get too deep into the practical applications of karma, let's address the elephant in the room: rebirth.
Ah, yes. Rebirth. It's important to note that the lecture makes a distinction between reincarnation, which is the idea of the same soul returning, and the Buddhist concept of rebirth, which is more like a continuity of consciousness taking on a new form, based on past karma.
Okay, so it's not about me coming back as another person, but more like the energy of my actions continuing in a new form.
It's a subtle but important distinction. The source material even uses the striking analogy of a usurper taking over after death. So it's not the exact you that is reborn, but rather a continuation of your consciousness shaped by the imprints of your past actions.
A usurper. That's a powerful image. So this usurper, it's shaped by those karmic seeds we were talking about earlier.
Yes. The imprints we create through our thoughts, words, and actions shape the trajectory of this continued consciousness. It's like this. Think of each thought as a drop of water falling onto a stone.
Okay, I'm following you.
Over time, those drops of water, representing our thoughts, can actually carve grooves into the stone. These grooves represent our karmic imprints, and they shape the flow of future experiences, influencing the direction of that continued consciousness. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me more.
The source material suggests that for most people, those karmic grooves, they're pretty deeply etched. But for enlightened beings, it's different. You see, their thoughts are more like clouds just passing through the sky, leaving no trace behind.
So you're saying enlightened beings don't create karma?
Well, they still perform actions, of course, but their motivations are pure, you know? They've kind of transcended that ego-driven grasping that creates those lasting karmic imprints. It's like they're acting from a place of pure love and wisdom without any attachment to the outcome.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But that brings up another question. If we're always creating karma, is it even possible to escape this cycle of rebirth?
Now that's where things get really interesting. In Buddhism, the ultimate goal isn't just about creating good karma. It's about transcending this whole cycle of karma and rebirth altogether.
Wait, transcending karma? How is that even possible if we're constantly creating it?
The lecture suggests that through practice and, really cultivating wisdom and compassion, it's possible to reach a state of awareness where actions no longer create those karmic grooves.
So it's like the stone becomes so smooth that the water just flows over it without leaving any marks behind.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a process of gradually weakening those karmic imprints until we reach a state of liberation.
But that sounds incredibly difficult, like
Yeah.
almost impossible for us regular folks.
It definitely requires commitment and dedication, that's for sure. But the source material emphasizes that the benefits of understanding karma, they aren't just for those seeking enlightenment. Even a basic grasp of these principles can have a profound impact on our lives right now.
Okay, so how do we apply these concepts practically? What can we do in our everyday lives to create more positive karma and maybe even start chipping away at those karmic grooves?
Well, the lecture offers some really helpful advice. It suggests starting by simply becoming more aware of the karmic consequences of our actions. It's about taking a pause before we speak or act, and really considering the potential impact of our choices, not just on ourselves, but on others as well.
So it's like taking a moment to consider, okay, is this action going to create more harmony or disharmony? Is it going to contribute to my well-being and the well-being of others?
Exactly. It's all about cultivating mindfulness, recognizing that our choices have power, and that they create ripples that extend far beyond ourselves.
This reminds me of something the lecture mentioned about the different, I guess you could say, flavors of karma. It said that negative karma is more rigid and predictable, while positive karma is more spontaneous and creative.
That's a really interesting point. The source uses the analogy of a script. With negative karma, it's like we're stuck in these repetitive patterns of thinking and behaving.
So if someone's always reacting to situations with anger, they're basically just following a script that leads to more conflict and suffering.
Exactly. Those negative habits, they become so ingrained that we react almost unconsciously, and we just end up creating more and more of those same negative experiences. But positive karma is different. It's about responding to situations with creativity and flexibility, guided by a genuine desire to benefit others, rather than clinging to rigid ideas about how things should be.
So it's not about following a strict set of rules, but more about cultivating a mindset of generosity and kindness that allows us to act spontaneously in ways that create more harmony.
That's a great way to put it. The lecture emphasizes that as we cultivate positive karma, we naturally become more spontaneous and creative in how we express kindness and generosity. It becomes less about effort and more about a natural outpouring of our genuine desire to help others.
That makes so much sense. It's not about trying to force ourselves to be good, but about cultivating a way of being in the world that naturally leads to more positive and beneficial actions.
Precisely. And the source material highlights that this shift in perspective and behavior has a direct impact on our own well-being. When we act from a place of kindness, generosity, and understanding, we create a positive ripple effect that not only benefits others, but also brings us a sense of peace, joy, and inner harmony.
So it's a win-win. We help others and we feel good doing it.
Exactly. And as we deepen our understanding of karma, we start to experience this profound sense of interconnectedness, a feeling of unity with all beings. It's no longer about individual happiness, but about contributing to a more harmonious and compassionate world.
Wow, this is starting to paint a really beautiful picture of what it means to live in alignment with karma.
It's a journey of self-discovery, compassion, and ultimately liberation from suffering. It's about recognizing the power we have to shape our own destinies and create a more meaningful and fulfilling life, both for ourselves and for all beings.
This has been such an insightful conversation. But before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something that's been on my mind. The lecture mentioned some scientific research that seems to support the possibility of an afterlife. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. What's so fascinating about the source material is that it doesn't shy away from exploring potential connections between these ancient spiritual concepts, like karma and rebirth, with modern scientific inquiry. It specifically mentions research on near-death experiences and past life recall, highlighting some intriguing details that suggest consciousness might be more than we currently understand.
So there's actual scientific evidence that suggests there might be something beyond this physical life.
Well, evidence might be a strong word, but there are definitely documented cases that challenge our conventional understanding of consciousness. For example, the lecture mentions an anecdote from near-death experience research, where a patient, while clinically dead, accurately described a coin hidden in a jar on a high shelf, something they couldn't have possibly known about unless their consciousness was truly separate from their physical body.
That's incredible. And what about past life recall? Does the lecture mention any specific examples of that?
Yes, it highlights the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, who dedicated his career to studying children who claim to remember past lives. His research, though controversial, documented numerous cases where these children had very specific details about their alleged past lives, details that could be verified.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. I mean, I know science is always evolving, but these examples suggest there might be more to the human experience than we realize.
It certainly raises some intriguing questions, and the source material emphasizes the importance of approaching these topics with both open-mindedness and a healthy dose of skepticism. We might not have all the answers, but it's fascinating to consider the possibilities.
Absolutely. And even if we're not sure what to believe, I think it's valuable to explore these concepts and consider how they might inform our understanding of life, death, and everything in between.
I couldn't agree more. It's these kinds of explorations that challenge our assumptions and expand our understanding of what it means to be human.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm sure our listeners have plenty to ponder.
Indeed. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
So we've explored all these fascinating ideas about karma and rebirth, and even touched on some of the scientific research that might support these concepts. But, you know, I think it's time to bring things back down to earth for a minute. What does all this mean for the average person? You know, someone who's just trying to navigate life and maybe isn't necessarily striving for enlightenment in this lifetime.
Well, that's where I think the real beauty of these Buddhist teachings lies. It's not just about some distant spiritual goal. It's about living a more meaningful and fulfilling life right here, right now.
Okay, I love that. So how do we actually do that? Like, give us the actionable steps.
The lecture suggests a very simple starting point. Just become more aware of the karmic consequences of our actions. Before we speak or act, take a moment to pause and really consider the potential impact of our choices, not just on ourselves, but on others as well.
So it's not just about thinking before we speak. It's about thinking before we act, too, like really taking a moment to consider those ripple effects.
Exactly. It's all about cultivating mindfulness, recognizing that our choices have power, and understanding that they create these ripples that extend far beyond ourselves.
And I remember the lecture talked about reducing negative karma. But how do we do that without, becoming obsessive or neurotic about it?
Well, the source material suggests a really helpful approach. It's more about focusing on avoiding actions that are inherently harmful rather than getting caught up in trying to constantly generate good karma.
So less about racking up those karmic brownie points and more about just not being a jerk.
You got it. It's about recognizing that actions like lying, stealing, or harming others, whether physically or emotionally, create negative karma because they disrupt the harmony and well-being of ourselves and others.
Got it. Step one, don't be a jerk. Check. But what about cultivating positive karma? What does that look like in our daily lives?
Well, the lecture emphasizes that positive karma isn't about rigid rules or forcing ourselves to be good. It's about cultivating a mindset of generosity, kindness, and what Buddhists call skillful action.
Skillful action. That sounds intriguing. What does that entail?
Skillful action is about acting in ways that are wise, compassionate, and appropriate to the situation at hand. It's about responding to the needs of the moment with clarity and understanding.
So it's not just about blindly doing good deeds. It's about being thoughtful and intentional with our actions and considering the context and the potential consequences.
Exactly. The lecture even suggests that as we cultivate positive karma, We naturally become more spontaneous and creative in how we express kindness and generosity. It becomes less about effort and more about a natural outpouring of our genuine desire to benefit others.
I love that. So it's not about forcing ourselves to be good. It's about cultivating a way of being in the world that naturally leads to more positive and beneficial
Yeah.
actions.
Precisely. And the source material highlights that this shift in perspective and behavior, it actually has a direct impact on our own well-being. When we act from a place of kindness, generosity, and understanding, we create this positive ripple effect. And that not only benefits others, but also brings us a sense of peace, joy, and inner harmony.
So it's a win-win. We help others and we feel good doing it.
Exactly. And as we cultivate positive karma, we start to experience this even deeper sense of interconnectedness, this feeling of unity with all beings. It's no longer just about individual happiness, it becomes about contributing to a more harmonious and compassionate world.
So it's like karma isn't just a personal belief system. It's a way of life that can transform not only our own lives, but also the world around us.
Exactly.
Well, there you have it, folks. Karma. It's not about punishment or reward. It's about understanding the power of our choices and using that understanding to create a more meaningful and fulfilling life for ourselves and for everyone around us.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and choosing to act from a place of wisdom, compassion, and skillful action.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into karma, we invite you to consider how these concepts might resonate with your own life, even if you're not quite sure what to believe. We encourage you to explore these ideas and see how they might inform your understanding of the world and your place in it.
And remember, as you navigate the ups and downs of life, to approach your choices with mindfulness, kindness, and a genuine desire to contribute to the well-being of yourself and others.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into karma. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.